NFL. We are 8 days away from the draft, and today is a special day. Mel Kiper Jr. releasing his final mock draft, and here are the top 10. And I will draw your attention down near the bottom of your screen to where it tells you that he does have Ty Simpson of Alabama being selected by the Cardinals, who trade up to number 30 to get him. Jeremiah Love picked 4th by the Titans, and Sonny Styles going 6th to the Cowboys in a huge trade up. Dallas has 12 and 20 in this draft. So let's bring Mel Kiper Jr. into the conversation and start with that. Mel, you have the Cowboys moving up from 12 and 20 to 6 to take Sonny Styles. Give us the thinking.
They need defense desperately. 9 games, they gave up over 30 or more points, and Sonny Styles is a difference maker. He's arguably the best defensive player in the draft right there with Orville Reese and David Bailey. You can make an argument he's the 3rd best player overall in this draft. He tested off the charts. He had a great year. He had 13 more tackles than Orville Reese did. Transition from safety to linebacker, cut down on the missed tackles. And why go from 12 to 6? Because you get the elite defensive player you need. You don't get that player at 12. 20, there's a drop-off after the first 17 or 18 players in this draft. And Cleveland's a perfect spot because Caden Proctor, offensive tackle, Alabama, it's too high at 6. But it makes more sense at 12, the left tackle from Alabama, than reaching at 6. So, again, if Dallas would get back 39 in the second round in this trade, while they give 20, get back 39, and they get the super blue chipper that they desperately need to help this defense get a lot better in Sonny Styles.
So, Lewis, here it seems to me, here's the question. If you're the Cowboys, would you rather have one great player or 2 good ones? That's what Mel is laying out for us here. How do you, if this trade happens, and I turn to you, the moment Shefty reports it on Thursday night in Pittsburgh, what's the first thing you're going to say?
I'm not surprised. Look, and I'll tell you why. Look, I've said this before about Sonny Styles. I think he's the safest player. And look, sometimes safe means you're not necessarily really high on the guy's actual physical attributes. No, his physical attributes are off the chart. When I say safe, I say this. This kid's a pro already. He is a pro. He is a foundational player. He's the kind of guy that you build an entire organization around at the command and control center at the Mike linebacker position. He will be the guy that you put front and center in front of the media. He's the guy who will speak for the football team from day one. Sonny has that kind of polish. He has been raised the right way. He did it at Ohio State. He was the green dot player there. Everyone looked up to this kid, on top of the fact that he's built like an avatar. And he's a freak of nature when it comes to his athletic ability. I know his dad, Lorenzo Styles, played with him in Atlanta. This kid has been groomed for this moment. Simple as that.
Kimberly Martin, insider extraordinaire, will be at the Cowboys next week. You'll be covering them for us on draft night. So what is your sense here?
Well, piggybacking off what Lou said, everybody that I've talked to about this kid talks about his rare measurables, right? But they talk about A-plus character. This is a guy who can relate to anyone. So when Mel says, oh, Sonny Styles to the Cowboys, I understand it. Here's the one caveat, though. People around the league, when I ask them about the Cowboys, what should they do? They say the Cowboys are not a team that's one Sonny Styles away from winning a championship. They have a lot of holes on this defense, which we already know. At 12 and 20, if they stay there, they're able to get 2 quality players. And this is a new staff. There's a new defensive coordinator who's never called plays before. So there are a lot of question marks with the Cowboys, going along with the fact that we don't know what's happening with George Pickens either.
So that's really, I think you've identified exactly where I started, which is, do you want the one great player or do you want 2 good ones? That's sort of the way they'd be looking at it.
But I think, I mean, I get it. I understand that you kind of like want more cracks at it, and maybe you feel as though you can kind of fill a couple more needs. Sonny is can't miss, though.
Yeah.
He's cannot miss. Let me say that again. He is cannot miss. When you get him, you know you're getting a great player. You're getting a great person. And that's exactly what they need on that side of the ball, where all we did was kill them last year, and deservedly so. This guy will change that.
They also don't have a second-round pick. So they have 12 and 20. If they move back from 20, you move back, you're able to collect more picks and, like you said, have more cracks at the apple, like more bites at the apple, whatever the phrase is. Right. So I just think when you're Jerry Jones, he's been asked about, could you move up? Could you trade back? And he's like, I've looked in that mirror. I've thought about every possibility. There's a lot. Jerry clearly thinks he has a playoff type of offense, right?
Yeah.
It's that defense. Everybody expects them to go defense with their first 2 picks, but where will they be?
So, Mel, I love it. I mean, if it happens, I'll be the happiest man in Pittsburgh on that night because, as you know, I'm in the interesting business. Now, I want to draw everyone's attention, if we can put his top 10 back up there again, to 4 and 5 because they tie together. At 4, Mel, you have Jeremiah Love going that early. That's really the big question. For those of you who've not been following the process, the first 3 picks, we think we have a very good sense of what's going to happen. Mendoza will clearly be 1. David Bailey and Arvell Reese are overwhelmingly expected to go 2 and 3 in either order. And then the mystery begins. So, Mel, you have Jeremiah Love going off the board at 4 to Tennessee. And then the Giants taking the safety Caleb Downs out of Ohio State. Take us through the thinking on those 2 picks.
Well, first of all, I can't believe that if you're at 4 and you're Tennessee with Cam Ward, you're going to go away from Jeremiah Love because he's not just a running back. He can be, and Lewis has talked about his great receiving ability, slot wide. He can do so many things as a fear factor player with Cam Ward, who's emerging as a franchise quarterback. Who better than Jeremiah Love to help Cam Ward get to that elite status, which he showed mid to late in the season he can be this year coming up. So for me, Jeremiah Love just too good to pass up. Arguably the best player in this draft. And then Downs for Harbaugh. Harbaugh, Kyle Hamilton. Harbaugh, Caleb Downs. Yes, he's not the physical talent in terms of size that Kyle Hamilton is, but his football IQ, the versatility, the culture change, the alpha that he will be on that defense and in that locker room with this entire football team, Caleb Downs will bring that. So I get the safety position and all that. The safety, you're much more when you're versatile. You see what Kyle Hamilton dropped to 14. Was that the right move? No, it wasn't. It was a wrong move. He should have never gotten to 14. Should have been one of the first 2 or 3 players taken. So if Kyle Hamilton gets to 10 or 12, it would be ridiculous. Could it happen? Who knows? But for the Giants, because of John Harbaugh and Kyle Hamilton, I think we'll see a little bit of that in Caleb Downs.
I love you, Mel.
Everybody does.
I love when you start. I can see your temperature going up. If you had that blood pressure cuff on, that thing would be going whoop, whoop, like this. But hey, you know what? Look, I'm with you. I'm with you about, putting safeties in a certain box and in a certain typecast, so to speak, saying, look, they shouldn't be valued this high positionally. I disagree. Because of the fact that the same way I disagree about off-ball linebackers, Mike linebackers, guys who are right down the middle in that command and control center. I just don't know if Caleb Downs, for me, having come from a background where we drafted a guy in the top 5, we drafted Sean Taylor in Washington, but Sean was a freak now. Sean was 6'3", 225 pounds, almost 230, and ran sub 4.5. You got to be like that. You got to be like Eric Berry. You got to be like Eric Turner from back in my day in the early 90s. Caleb's a good player. I just don't know if he's a great player that warrants being drafted that high.
All right, so that's going to be – go ahead, Mel.
I'll say one thing, Trini. One quick thing. Kyle Hamilton, why was he there at 14? Remember, they had their visits, and Kyle was there, and John Harbaugh said, why are you here? You're not going to be here when we draft. We're not going to get getting you. Why did he drop? Because he ran 4.59, 4.56. So this notion we do revisionist history that Kyle Hamilton was this freakish talent. He ran 4.59, 4.56, and he was coming off an injury. So that's why he dropped. It was for that reason, not about the safety position and devalued and all that. So, again, we want to look back at him and saying he was awesome. He was coming out. There were some questions about that speed.
Safeties have come a long way since Lewis and the neck roll back in the day. Let me turn to Kimberly on the Jeremiah Love of it all. The people you talk to around the league, does 4 sound about right to you?
Yeah, a lot of people have mentioned the Tennessee Titans. They make a lot of sense. I've seen him mock to the Giants as well. I spoke to a GM who said, listen, this kid, you talked about can't miss, right? This kid cannot miss. He is top 5 talent. And what do you do with top 5 talent? You draft them that high regardless of position. I think with the Giants of it all, I think it's really fascinating just because you have John Harbaugh, head coach, where do you look at his Ravens history and think like, okay, strong running game. He needs that. Cam Scadaboo's coming off that injury. Or do you look at this Giants team needs defensive help? That's really fascinating when I look at this team. But Jeremiah Love, to me, he is a steal wherever he goes.
I think it'll be really interesting if the first 4 picks go the way that Mel forecast them. The Giants could take Sonny Styles if they like him that much as well. So it's all out there again. Mel's last mock of the cycle is up right now. We'll have much more on it as we go. There's other football conversations.